What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're doing another card design chat video with a guest, and today I have my friend Mike Fouchet here to talk with me about some card design. We'll be looking at mostly older cards from the 2000s era, but we'll also be referencing, how they would or how they could not fit in today's standard format, things we would like to see in today's standard format, and also taking a quick look at some of the new battle styles cards that have been revealed. So we'll get into that in just a moment. First, I want to shout out PotownStore.com, my lovely sponsor and the best place for you to get PTCGO codes. Be sure to use code Celio for 5% off. And I also wanted to let Mike introduce himself. So go ahead, Mike.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Mike Fouchet. I've been playing this game for way too long, almost half my life. So a lot of these cards that we're going to talk about today, I have very much firsthand experience playing at high-level tournaments. It's been really cool to see the evolution of the game over the years, and that's part of the reason that I continue to play, because it's a constant challenge. So it's always fun and interesting to have these types of discussions. So thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody wanted to check out some of your content, where could they do that at?
So most recently, I am one of the co-hosts of the Trash Lounge podcast, along with Britt Pybus and Brent Halliburton. We have been pretty consistent, coming out with an episode every week since September, I believe we started. Took this past week off, but yeah, look for that. It's on iTunes, it's on the internet, it's on pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, and that is sponsored by Channel Fireball, so shout out to them.
Awesome. Yeah, I would definitely suggest checking out that podcast. There's a lot of Pokemon TCG podcasts popping up right now that are going under the radar, and a lot of them are really great. So definitely be on the lookout for those. So yeah, let's start out with our card design discussion. The first topic I believe we are doing today is kind of support evolution Pokemon. So something like Claydol from Great Encounters with the Cosmic Power ability. If any of the viewers aren't familiar, Claydol was probably the best, if not one of the best, support Pokemon in this time. The only competition was Uxie, I believe, but as far as a stage 1 support Pokemon, Claydol was really amazing. And Cosmic Power reads, once during your turn, you may choose up to 2 cards from your hand and put them on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you do, draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. So it allowed you to kind of cycle through your deck, get rid of some cards you don't need right now without getting rid of them, and draw a moderate amount of cards as long as your hand size wasn't crazy. So Mike, take it away. Let me know what you wanted to say about Claydol.
So Claydol is, I would go much further than what you said. It was not only the best support Pokemon of its time, but possibly one of the best, if not the best ever printed. It was really the first stage 1 Pokemon that was so strong in this draw search role. And it's also we've seen similar effects come out since Claydol's been out. Octillery from Breakthrough, I think.
Yeah, one of the break sets. Yeah, with Abyssal Hand.
Yeah, that's kind of like the second best. And think about how much better Claydol is, right? Like Octillery is just straight up draw to 5, and Claydol says not only do you draw to 6, but you get to get rid of 2 cards that you don't want, and so you can draw more cards. So Claydol is way better than Octillery, and Octillery was pretty good. And I guess you could use multiple Octilleries in a turn, but it didn't really make much sense, right? Because since you are only drawing to 5, you would then need to have a different way of getting cards out of your hand. Whereas with Claydol, you could set up 2 Claydols, and just naturally you can draw, maybe 4 cards with the first Claydol. And even if you don't draw any playable cards, you can still draw 2 more cards with the second Claydol. So a lot of decks did that. Usually played like a 3/3 Claydol line in your deck. So Claydol is super, super strong. Like I said before that, it was more stage 2 Pokemon actually that were the setup type of cards that would sit on your bench. So Claydol kind of marked a change in that, and now we don't have really anything like that. I mean, the best, like I said, Octillery was good in recent memory. Zoroark was kind of like the other stage 1 setup Pokemon, but if Zoroark, we have Zoroark in the format right now essentially with Chinchino.
Chinchino,
and it doesn't really see much play. The reason Zoric was so good was because it was also such a good attacker as well with double colorless in the format. So
and it was also fairly bulky. Like,
right.
things couldn't snipe it or gust it and guarantee knocking it out, at least at that time.
Yeah. So we don't really see this anymore. And it's unfortunate because it's like one of the reasons that those formats were so good is because Claydol made your deck so consistent.
Yeah, and I think an important thing about Claydol, at least in my opinion, is that it was a balanced. It was so strong, but it also had a pretty balanced design. Like, it didn't feel unfair, whereas like turn 1 dropping multiple Uxies or turn 1 dropping multiple Shamans has felt unfair in some formats, or maybe like one makes the game one-sided. Whereas Claydol, you knew it was coming a turn ahead of time, unless Broken Time Space or candied down a Claydol. But if your opponent wanted to start setting up bench damage on it or working a way to disrupt your Claydol instead of attacking one of your attackers, it also brought those other levels of depth into the game. Because once a Dedenne or a Crobat or an Eldegoss are down right now, they've been used. So you can't really disrupt your opponent from doing that unless you like get down a power plant early, and then your opponent has to Crobat instead of Dedenne. So it's not even that much interaction really. So I think Claydol just brought multiple levels of depth to the game, while also being a very fair card. Like, it wasn't overpowered in the way that it hurts your opponent, but like you said, it made decks so consistent, which is why some of these formats are so highly revered.
And I guess the last thing about Claydol is that it was, even though it was so good, it wasn't played in every deck. There was lots of successful decks while Claydol was out that didn't play Claydol. And so that is also a testament to kind of the balance of it, where he's now like every single deck pretty much plays Dedenne. Or Crobat.
Yeah, even decks that want to focus on being a single prize deck pretty much have to play the Dedenne or Crobat to keep up. Like, I think I saw Isaiah Bradner share a Donphan deck that had Giovanni's Exile in it, or if it wasn't that, then it was an Excadrill deck with Giovanni's Exile. But just to use your supporter for the turn to clear off those support Pokemon that you had to basically use to stay in the game. But yeah, I love Claydol as a card, and the other support Pokemon from an evolution support Pokemon I have up here is Pidgeot from Fire Red Leaf Green with the quick search Poke Power. Once during your turn, you may choose any card from your deck and put it into your hand. You can only use one quick search turn, but Pidgeot was a stage 2. And you'll notice if you're watching this and you didn't play during that time, it might be a little surprising to see these lower HPs. Pidgeot stage 200 HP, but very, very good card, because it was kind of safe on your bench. You were, to use that quick search ability when you needed to. Mike, did you have anything specific about Pidgeot that's a little different than Claydol?
Well, so just like you said, it's a stage 2 and kind of the era before Claydol. So I think Claydol came out in like 2008. And so like kind of like from 04 to 06, 07, it was really the age of the stage 2. Like almost every single deck was based around some powerful stage 2 Pokemon.
Yeah.
And since you're already playing 4 Rare Candy, Pidgeot kind of naturally fit into these decks. You would just play a thin line, usually a 2-on-2, and it just really helped your setup. The other thing, this is kind of a larger issue, but you mentioned that these Pokemon, Pidgeot and Claydol, were safe on your bench. And only since Lysander came out, whenever that was, I mean, it's a long time ago now, but...
8 years maybe?
Yeah. Since Lysander came out, before Lysander came out, there was no such thing as a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a guaranteed gust?
Yeah, guaranteed gust effect, right? With no like drawback or condition associated with it. Those didn't exist before Lysander. And so therefore, all of these support Pokemon were safe on the bench. And it's really, that is, I mean, there's a couple like real core differences between the game kind of like post black and white and pre black and white. That's kind of like, I would say, the biggest, I don't know, line in the sand of when the game has changed. And there's been a lot of differences since then, but that is certainly one of the biggest, is that support Pokemon really don't exist in the same way that they did before, largely because of the Gust effects.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and I do want to hop over just to the battle styles revealed cards here real quick. Something I was talking with Mike about prior to hitting the record button for this video is that I see Pokemon or creatures, whatever you want to say, I see them trying to inch evolutions back into being relevant with these revealed cards from battle styles, with the Octillery and the Houndoom. If you want to see these for yourself at home, this is just on pokebeach.com if you happen to have not seen these revealed cards already. But they've revealed two fairly powerful Stage 1 support Pokemon. And I'm saying they're support Pokemon because obviously you wouldn't use Houndoom doing 50 damage for 2 energy right now, or Octillery doing 50 damage for 3 energy in today's climate. But Houndoom with the single strike roar searches your deck for a single strike energy card, which is a special energy card coming out, and attach it to one of your single strike Pokemon, then put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So a really good special energy acceleration on a Stage 1 Pokemon. So they're trying to push the power level up on these Stage 1 Pokemon with their abilities. And then the Octillery just allows you to search your deck for any one Rapid Strike card once a turn. So kind of making me think of, you know, the Pidgeot that allowed you to search your deck for any one card. And then Houndoom reminded me of Team Magma's Camera a bit. So, Mike, do you think that they are trying to push Stage 1s into relevance a little bit more? And do you think that they could actually be successful with this?
So at first glance, these two, I think Octillery is much better than Houndoom, in my opinion. I think if Houndoom was going, so, and I say that really thinking about the Gust effects, because Houndoom is very, very powerful, but since it is more powerful, I think it's more likely that your opponent would kind of want to quote unquote waste a boss and kill the Houndoom as soon as possible. Octillery is less powerful, and so therefore it will not draw the boss as often, I think, and kind of just allow you to slowly set up your stuff, and because it's not really doing anything super powerful, it's just kind of consistency. So therefore I would, even though I do think Houndoom is a more powerful card, I think Octillery will just be more successful and see more play because of that. So I do hope that they continue printing, more Stage 1, Stage 2 support Pokemon, but if you require more than one of these out at any given time, it's not really going to be that successful because of the Gust effects.
Right.
I actually think it's weird that Octillery has a restriction on its ability, so you can only use one Octillery a turn, but Houndoom does not. So that's pretty interesting. So maybe Houndoom will be okay because you could actually set up multiple of them and kind of get around being bossed up. So maybe it's better than I initially thought.
Yeah, I guess with the Houndoom, you could, set up 2 Houndours, and if neither of them get gusted, then you get double Houndoom next turn. But where with Octillery, if you set up 2 Remoraid's and neither of them get gusted, like you said, it's restricted to 1 Rapid Strike search, so one of them would almost be, quote-unquote, wasted if they don't get gusted.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is, Houndoom, there's only 4 energy in your deck that it can get, right? And Octillery, in theory, has, I don't know, 15 outs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Houndoom uses itself up really, really quickly. I think there is some recursion of the
there
energy.
is.
So that is, yeah, and they shuffle into your deck. So yeah. I guess in theory it could keep going. But yeah, I think it's great if they continue to print these support Pokemon. I assume that at this point they're going to keep reprinting Lysander, Bosswood, or something to that, and I just don't know with the really, really big Pokemon in the format of Vs and VMAXs, coupled with guaranteed Gust effects, it's just always going to be an uphill battle for these Pokemon.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to agree with that. So the next thing I have on the docket here is what I've always referred to as like starter Pokemon in the Pokemon TCG, something like the Dunsparce from Sandstorm, or I believe there was like a Spindo with Double Draw or something. Like these Pokemon that you want to start active because back in the EX era, you could attack going first. So if you start with this Dunsparce, you have an energy in hand, great, you can attach and strike and run, which searches your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon. And like Mike was saying, this was heavily a stage 2 with some support stage 1 Pokemon format and metagame. So getting 3 basic Pokemon onto your bench means that you're getting set up first in theory. So I really miss these kind of Pokemon being around, even back to like the Eek Cleffa back in the Neo era. These Pokemon that you wanted to start with, they weren't really relevant in the mid to late game, but they were good for setting up your game because the game was slower. And a lot of this does come down to that guaranteed Gust and HP and damage that we've seen power crept up from that time. But Dunsparce also wouldn't really be able to exist in today's game because of the turn 1 rules that we currently have. You can't play a supporter and you can't attack going first. So I think a Pokemon like this would need an ability or clause or something that says this Pokemon can attack going first. Mike, do you think starter Pokemon like this would be at all relevant either today or post-rotation if they were allowed to attack going first?
Yeah, I think so. The other Pokemon that comes to mind, I should have mentioned it to you, but it just came to mind now.
Yeah.
Is the Spiritomb from...
the Platinum era?
Yeah. So
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll pull that up.
It's a bit... So part of the reason that was so strong... Well, so its attack was free, actually. It had no cost.
Right.
And you got to search your deck for an evolution card and evolve one of your bench Pokemon. And then you put a counter on the Spiritomb. But that's obviously a very strong attack.
Yeah.
But the reason that the card was so strong is that its ability said your opponent can't play item cards.
Yeah.
And so I think you could go one of 2 ways. You could do what you said with the Dunsparce by letting it attack first. But if you give a starter Pokemon that ability, it actually, I think, would be quite viable even right now because it just slows the opponent down so much. Like, they can still Gust through the Spiritomb, but they have to just have it, right? They can't be playing quick balls and whatnot to Dedenne. You can't quick ball for Dedenne into the boss and whatnot. So if you had a Spiritomb type of card in the format right now, I actually think that would go a long way for helping evolutions.
Absolutely. And bringing up the free attack cost is super relevant too, because like looking at I hadn't thought about it in this way either. But if you just introduced this exact Spiritomb card into the format right now, even if you couldn't attack with it turn 1, I actually think this could be played as a 4-of. Because think about it, even if you're going second, ADPZ has like 4 Quick Balls, 3 Cherish Balls, 4 Energy Switch, 4 Metal Saucer. Like, they might just not be able to do anything. Now, of course, they do have Intrepid Sword because Zacian, such an overtuned card, but you could always just Marnie them in Darkness Grace and be on with your day. So yeah, Spiritomb could honestly just be reprinted right into the game.
Yeah, just like straight up, like as is. Yeah, it'd probably be good.
Yeah, that's actually crazy to think about. Yeah, this card would still be strong today.
Yeah. In terms of other starter Pokemon, the only like recent thing that we've had to that is Jirachi, right? And when Jirachi had a skateboard, it was good. And Jirachi is, for those of you that don't know, it's not an exact reprint, but a very similar card to a Jirachi that came out in Hidden Legends or Deoxys?
Yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah, I think it's Deoxys. But yeah, it's a spiritual reprint of an old one regardless of...
Right. And that was, and so kind of like Luke said, that was the golden age of starter Pokemon. You had Dunsparce, you had the Jirachi, you had the other Jirachi, which that one was Hidden Legends, which was similar to Spiritomb.
The one you had to attack with, right?
Yeah, you had Magmar, which is dump and draw, discard energies, and draw cards. So you had a lot of these different starter Pokemon. And so Jirachi was good, but it was it was played in a lot of stuff when a skateboard was around, but just losing a skateboard was enough to really relegate it to only a couple decks. And yeah, I can't think of any other, like you could consider Bolton the starter Pokemon, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's not really, right? Because in my view of starter Pokemon is that they do their thing at the beginning of the game and then they're completely useless afterward. And Bolton does not fit that, right? And
No,
Bolton's
not
quite
at all.
good throughout the game.
Yeah, he gets arguably better as the game goes on. You have more energy on the board. Yeah, but like the starter, thinking about that, like right now, decks are like all straight gas. Like, because it's all basic Pokemon, like you have your 4 Zacian, 2 ADP, 2 Dedenne, 2 Crobat, and like all of your cards are playable at all points of the game just about. Whereas World's winning decks back then played 4 Dunsparce. They like were basically useless after turn 3 unless you were having a really slow game. And those were the optimal ways to build decks, which is really cool. The game was slow even when decks were built optimally.
Yeah. Part of that is also, and this is kind of going on a little bit of a different conceptual thing, is that just the supporters themselves were also used for search more so than draw. We used to play our supporter Celio's network, just search your deck for a Pokemon,
Just
right?
grab a Pokemon.
Yeah, like if that was in the format, right? Well, it was in the format like a couple years ago. I forget what it was called. Yeah, like completely unplayable, terrible card.
Yep.
And just because why would you search for one card when you can draw 7? And so, and not all of the supporters, but the vast majority of them were like that. You had Bebe Search, you had Roseanne's Research, things like that. The best draw cards we had were Steven's Advice, which is the same as Erica's Hospitality now, which is not even played. You had Copycat.
And Underground Expedition, TV Reporter.
Underground Expedition. Yeah, right. So you had all these, like, your draw cards were much, much weaker. So that's why you had to have these support Pokemon. So kind of like tying in all of this stuff, right? That's why you had to have these support Pokemon. You had to have these starter Pokemon because your supporters were just so much weaker. Now your supporters are so strong that they basically take the place of all of those other things. So you don't even really need them.
Yeah, for sure. Next, we have some special energies to talk about. So Mike and I didn't really discuss why he wanted to talk about these, so I'm just going to kind of let him take the floor. But I have Scramble Energy and Double Rainbow Energy up here. I'm just going to read what they do real quick. Scramble Energy can only be attached to an evolved Pokemon, excluding EX. So if you wanted to relate that to today, just can't be attached to GX, EXV, whatever. It provides colorless energy, but if you have more prize cards left in your opponent, it provides 3 energy of every type. Or every type of energy 3 at a time. And if the Pokemon Scramble is attached to isn't an evolved or it evolves into an EX, discard Scramble. And then Double Rainbow also can only be attached to an evolved Pokemon, excluding Pokemon EX. It provides 2 energy at a time, and the damage you do with it is reduced by 10. So take it away, Mike.
So, and after this, I think we're going to talk a little bit, just a broader category of cards that have conditions on which they can be played on. And I think these are 2 really good examples of that. These cards pushed evolution Pokemon to be played, which is the opposite of what we have had in the last 8 years or so.
Yeah, I think we did have Triple Excel, and we had Twin Energy, which Twin Energy's non-V, non-GX, or non-GX. So we did have those that helped a little bit. Things like Golisopod, Aeropod, Mad Party, but those things are all kind of gate kept by ADP anyway. But continue.
But even those, like, think about how less powerful those 2 cards are compared to these 2 cards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Double Rainbow, the fact that you can power up any evolution Pokemon with these cards made them so strong. I think just if you printed these as is right now, these would, I don't know if they would single-handedly bring evolutions back, but they would certainly make people stop and think more about playing them.
This and Spiritomb, the evolution starter pack.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I just think we need more cards, more powerful cards like this that have conditions that are not basic, not GXV, because that's the only way you're going to pull the meta away from being centered on these very, very big, powerful things. And that's the way the game's been trending for a while. It's certainly like I hesitate to use the word simpler because I do think Pokemon has had lots of skill in it, for since they've started this trend, and I don't want to take that away.
Yeah.
But there is it is somewhat simpler in design by just using basics and stage ones rather than like big stage twos and setting up throughout the game.
Yeah, there's less decisions throughout a game on average now.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's always going to be skill because there's always going to be optimal sequencing, small, minute decisions, thinning your deck better, things like that. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think these energies that really support evolution Pokemon would be really strong. Especially like maybe Double Rainbow would have to be changed a little bit. Like -10 back in the day was actually really significant. Now -10 would be like, oh, whatever.
Maybe
like
-30.
-20, -30, something like that. And Scramble is also really cool too because it also has the come from behind mechanic, right? It's so hard to come from behind with so many decks right now. Really the only standard deck that comes to mind that is good at it is Pikarom. Every other deck can come from behind, but like it struggles if it loses the first couple prizes. So having cards that really promote that strategy I think would be nice to have.
Yeah, and there was like you were saying, if they implement more cards that only benefit evolution or only benefit non-EX, non-GX, non-V, and I really think we're seeing a glimmer of hope for that with the Empoleon from Battle Styles, because for the first time in the history of the game, they've implemented this phrase called Rule Box. So Empoleon, the revealed card from Battle Styles, has the ability Emperor's Eyes. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's basic Pokemon in play have no abilities except for Pokemon with a rule box. Pokemon V, Pokemon GX, etc. have rule boxes. So while this is completely backwards of what we're talking about, this is like shut off everything. Oh, except the V and GXs, they can have their abilities. This gives hope that we'll get more cards using this rule box thing, because this is something that I think we've been wanting ever since GXs came out, basically, because when we saw that they were going to start printing multi-prizers that were not called EXs anymore, we wanted a way to combine all of them, because it's future-proofs things for expanded format, and even for when they make VX cards or GV cards or whatever they're going to be called in the future. It future-proofs that. So I have a lot of hope for things using the rule box phrase in the future, hopefully for the good of evolution. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you. I really like this idea, but do we know, does this apply to like other things besides multi-prizers?
Yes, it applies to Prism Pokemon, because Prism Pokemon have a rule. I believe Mia said it on Twitter that basically if the Pokemon's rule box has the word rule in it. So like it says GX rule, V rule, EX rule, Prism rule. And I think there might be one other type of Pokemon, but it doesn't, I know it doesn't go back to Legends, because I don't think Legends said they had a rule. I think it's like black and white mechanics on or somewhat, but no, I don't think breaks do either. It might just be those four: EX, V, GX, and Prism.
Okay.
And it'll probably apply to Union V or V Union, whatever that's going to be when we get that.
Yeah. So if it's just Prisms being the only other thing, it's whatever. Like Prisms aren't really.
Yeah, just toss them in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really Prisms that are like the only Prism that we only have 2 Prism Pokemon right now anyway in standard. It's Coco and Shaman, and Coco is just there for the ability typically, and Shaman is played in the Rillaboom box that Azul played the other day. So yeah, I think it's fine to just throw just because Prisms have the rule word in their box, just throw that in there to make it more simple.
Yeah.
So going back to off that tangent, cards that help evolutions or cards that have the circumstances to fill, like we were talking about, coming from behind or working for evolutions. The next one I have, Rare Candy, doesn't really fall into the category of having a circumstance to fill, but it does have the category of helping evolutions. So for those of you that might be watching this that are a little newer to the game or left for a bit, there was a time when Rare Candy, you could play this item, or it was actually a trainer back then, you could play this as soon as the basic Pokemon came down. And you could play this on turn 1 to evolve a basic to either a stage 1 or a stage 2 right away. I don't actually know the exact year that they changed the Rare Candy. Probably around Black and White, was it?
Yeah, I think it was after. No, I think it might have been before the Guardy stuff.
Okay.
But I don't remember for sure. Yeah, I don't know either.
But yeah, so at some point they changed Rare Candy to say that you cannot play it if the Pokemon just came into play or if it's your first turn. And so evolutions used to be able to just be kind of accelerated out into play. And ironically, in my opinion, I think this actually carried less weight back then because most of your Pokemon needed some time to be set up and stuff. So unless you were like just like accelerating out a support Pokemon real quick, like a Blossom or a Firestarter or Blaziken or something like that, this didn't actually matter too much back then. Or correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
Yeah, not too much. Like the biggest time that it mattered in terms of like donking people was if you got like a turn 1 Pidgeot and they only had and they just had like a little basic that you could just kill immediately. Like that happened very rarely, but yeah, otherwise, I mean, like turn 1 Pidgeot is very powerful, but like it didn't really, lead to super unfair games the majority of the time.
Whereas now I think this would actually be pretty good because you could get, let's say, like a turn 1 Cinderace and then Welder and then swing for 190 and actually keep up with the basic Pokemon that are swinging for 190 that early. So now I actually think it would matter because the game's so quick. Would you tend to agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that they should just completely revert it, but I would even be happy with like a halfway where they said you can't use it on turn 1, but you can use it the turn that you play the basic, as long as it's not your first turn, right? I think that would be great as well. Because again, it goes back to the stupid Gust because, you play your basic down, they kill it very easily because it's a little wimpy thing, but being able to go, Rowlet, Candy, Decidueye in one turn, that's very, that's going to swing games, give you a chance to actually play the game.
I also think that would, like if Decidueye was even stronger, I think that would even change deck building a tiny bit if Decidueye was more of a threat. Because right now, people just take the loss to Decidueye, or they're a metal deck and they play Aegislash, kind of. Or their deck naturally beats it, like Scentiscorch has Volcanion, stuff like that. But decks that don't have like a 1-card tech for Decidueye kind of just take the loss. But if Decidueye was like, had another little boost to it to become stronger, or just, stage 2s in general, like we're talking about, that could even change how people build decks. Like they would have to maybe play non-V, non-GX Pokemon in their decks or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think like if Decidueye had Double Rainbow, even just that, it would be much stronger because one of the ways that Decidueye loses is just not like attacking and like not getting energy. So sometimes a Pikarom can just beat it by like Tapu Koko hitting a Decidueye twice before it gets the energy that it needs, right? And Double Rainbow just would help that a lot.
Yeah, and the other thing with Rare Candy, like you were alluding to, one of the problems with stage 2s, I guess it's an obvious issue, is that your opponent can just slap down their Pokemon if they're playing basics, while you have to find your basic, sometimes your stage 1, and then your stage 2, or your Rare Candy and your stage 2. And even when I've been playing a lot of Donphan, because I find that deck pretty fun to play compared to some of the other stuff in Standard, and even with that, where it's a stage 1 Pokemon, It's not enough to get the knockout with Donphan. I also need to have another Phanpy ready to go on the bench. Because if I don't, then I might not have anything to do next turn. And it's just going to be like a turn where I bench a Phanpy, attach, and hope it doesn't get gusted. And Rare Candy could even help that. It could even allow you to go like Phanpy Energy, Candy, Donphan, because the old Rare Candy also read that you could use it on stage 1 Pokemon.
Yep.
So yeah, it could even help there.
Yeah. While we're talking about candy, another card that was legal for a while was Broken Time Space, which was more recently we've seen Forest of Giant Plants, which had the same effect, but Broken Time Space was just for any Pokemon. Just immediately evolve anything. And Broken Time Space was way too good for the time that it was out. But it'd probably be fine now for a lot of the reasons you just said. Like, it'd probably be totally fine.
Yeah.
It would probably make Expanded too nuts, to be honest. It would probably have to be immediately banned and expanded. But in Standard, I think it would be totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool to consider in Standard. Because, like, there are even evolution decks that it would help to have Broken Time Space out sometimes and then get your other preferred stadium out there for later. Like, the Decidueye might want Turf Field out there at some point. But, yeah, Broken Time Space is so good. Yeah. It would be great to see. Like, something I have found myself saying ever since the Sword and Shield base was revealed. Like, just, like, I wish the creators would just, if they take a stage 2 Pokemon and they think it looks pretty good, just push it a little further. just give it something else. Like,
Rillaboom, you get 2 energy, make it 4. Screw it.
The worst thing that we can do is make stage 2 Pokemon too good and we'll have to play stage 2s. You know? Like, that's the worst that can happen. Whereas the basic Pokemon, if you think they're good, maybe dial them back a little bit. But yeah, I feel like they're holding back on some of the stage 2 and stage 1. Like the Shiftry that got released in Vivid Voltage that makes all of your opponent's supporters a hop. Like, in a vacuum, that sounds crazy. But in the current game, it's just not. I was talking with James Arnold a bit about this the other day. He's been on the channel for a card design episode before because, you know, he loves talking about old cards as well. And we were talking about how it doesn't really feel like they're cultivating a format right now. More like they're just making cards they think are strong and cool and giving them to us. Whereas the EX era, whether it was by chance or by design, it felt fairly cultivated. And I would also argue that I know 2010 is sometimes said to be overrated, but I think 2010 was fairly cultivated as well. So like they knew what cards they wanted to do well, and they had this balance that felt pretty even.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I think. Yeah, it just feels like recently they're releasing very powerful cards, and then they're like, in the next set, they're like, well, we released a super powerful card last set. Let's print a very powerful card that it's weak, that the last set's weak to.
Yeah, I feel like they've tried
exactly like that.
They've tried the Trump Pikarom like so many times. Like, even though it's not in writing, there's like several cards that you know they made thinking like, oh, this Pikarom's done. And it never is gone. I just stopped saying Pikarom is dead because I was wrong every time. I just...
But I mean, you think about like just the Sword and Shield sets, right? They print Dragapult, which is clearly the best VMAX. Then the very next set, they print Eternatus, which is clearly the best VMAX and beats Dragapult. Then the next set, they print Colossal, which, you know, if it was actually good, it would be... I mean, it still beats Eternatus, right? It just the format itself...
It just doesn't beat the other stuff.
Yeah, right. So it just seems very linear the way that they're creating, you know, the most powerful cards in the set.
Yeah, and I get asked a lot by people who weren't playing back in the late 2000s and stuff like that. Like, I get asked a lot, do you think it's just nostalgia making you think that the other sets were different? And I really don't. Like, I really do think that, like, back in, like, I didn't start actually competing until 2007, so I can't speak to before that for, like, a competitive environment. But I really do feel like back then they weren't just printing a busted card next set to take care of the one before, and then the next one, like, I feel like there were multiple good cards and they could coexist with the previous good cards from the previous sets, at least for the most part, in my opinion. But I try to keep myself in check and make sure I'm just not being nostalgic about the old stuff.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. And recently, probably like last spring and over the summer, I was playing in a bunch of the TCG1 events, like that PokeStats did and whatnot. And I will say that I do think some of the EX era formats are a little overrated now that going back and playing them, mostly because decks are actually pretty inconsistent comparatively to more modern day stuff. And I think that we've gotten used to, I don't know, like things are slower, yeah, but you also just kind of like totally dead draw way more often than I think you do now. So in that sense, that's not great. But I do think probably like '08 to 2010. I haven't played those in a while because they're not on TCG1 and they're not on PTCGO. But those formats might be a little bit better because we did have things. We did have stage 1 support in Claydol. We we had Uxie, which was obviously very powerful, but not really the same as Shaman, I would say.
Yeah. Even though it was better than Shaman, it wasn't.
Even though it was much better, it didn't have the same effect.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have all the playable items that we had.
Yeah, we didn't have things that we could just dump out of our hand at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So I would like to go play like '08 to 2010 a little bit more because I feel like those formats probably do hold up. And then 2011 was kind of a dumpster fire, and then then 2012 was kind of like the
black and white,
the turning point. Yeah. Mewtwo, Darkrai.
Yeah. I in my power creep video that went up yesterday, I talk about like basically like the two downwards turning points for me were 2012 and 2019. And because like 2012, in my opinion, took a very long time to get back to a really good age of Pokemon, which was 2017 for me. Like the early Sun and Moon was just beautiful. It felt like a cultivated format again. But then Unbroken Bonds was like another turning point for me, where like we had Reshizard, and then the next set we had Mewtwo, and then the next set we had ADP, and then the next set we had Zacian V, and it kind of just went on a downward spiral from there. Yeah, so the next card we have up here, going back to like the conditions and playing from behind and stuff, we had Twins. And this could help any kind of deck, really. Could help basics, could help stage 1, could help stage 2s. So Twins, pretty similar to Teammates, except you can only use it if you have more prize cards left in your opponent, where Teammates was if something was knocked out last turn. So you could still, in theory, play Teammates even if you're ahead. Whereas Twins is only if you're behind on prizes, and you search your deck for any 2 cards. And now this was in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era, so 2010, but played in the 2011 era a lot. So Mike, you were just talking about the 2011 era, but what about Twins in that era? How did Twins feel in that era, and do you think it could kind of feel similar today?
Twins is just very powerful in certain decks. Not every deck wanted to play it, but 2011 was kind of it. I didn't really play very much during like the that year, so like city championships and whatnot. So I only really remember nationals and worlds from that year, and we had the mid-season rotation, which kind of really stifled the format, and there was really only a couple good decks, which ironically led to the Truth being so strong because it was able to, accurately predict that only essentially 3 decks were viable.
Yeah, you had to beat like Reshiplosion, Magnezone,
and Stage 1.
Yeah, and Stage 1 box.
Yeah, and so as long as you beat those, and so Twins was obviously super powerful in a deck like the Truth, where you went behind and then used Twins to help you set up. But Twins was also very good in the Magnezone Emboar deck as well for similar reasons. You're trying to set up multiple stage 2s in a format that was quite aggressive. You know, even Reshiflosion, setting up multiple stage 2s, but your main attacker was a basic. And Reshiram and Zekrom were kind of the first time that you had these basics that were as big as stage 1s and stage 2s. And so and then the Donphan Yanmega stage 1 box was also just stage 1s, you know, so they're attacking pretty hard from
Yeah,
just turn
1
2.
energy or free energy.
Right, exactly. So Twins is really powerful for if you have set up stage 2 type of Pokemon in your format against other aggressive decks. Twins is very powerful. Twins would probably be a little too good, just as is right now. I think the fact that you can play it every turn as long as you stay behind is you know super strong.
Yeah.
And it allows you to just not get ahead until you're going to win the game. Which is it's a very cool mechanic and very interesting, but I would worry that unconditioned like that is maybe a little too strong. I think Teammates overall was a little bit better balanced. Like you said, you could still play it even if you're ahead, but like usually that wasn't. I don't know. That never made it feel like it was too OP because you're still getting knocked out the turn before.
And it still allowed your opponent to get around it with like damage counters or
right.
special conditions, stuff like that, right? Because did it have to be damage?
No,
Or no, it had to be knocked out during the turn. So if you got it knocked out with poison or burner.
Yeah, but so I mean, you could like create something that is, you know, a hybrid of those, right? You have to be behind and something got knocked out during your last turn. It might be a little too weak. I don't know. But I just think these types of cards are like important types of cards to think about printing if you want to have a format that again is a little bit slower, a little bit more setup oriented.
Yeah, and these cards typically bring some sense of skill or add something of skill expression into the game, because when you're ever able to search for 1 or 2 cards like we saw with Green's Exploration, Green's Reshizard on the surface just looked like a beat stick tag team swinging, but it was actually a deck piloted by really good players, because when you get to search for any 2 cards, there's always mistakes to be made with that, and there's always like 2 optimal cards to get.
Yeah, I never wanted to play Green's Reshizard because like, it seemed too hard for me.
Yeah, you couldn't just pick it up if you wanted to play it. I don't think, like, you had to actually sit down and work through some matchups and see what cards are best to get, because sometimes you want to get 2 cards that you're using immediately, sometimes you want to get 1 card to use now and 1 card to hold on to for later. So I love when those kinds of things come into the game, since we've had so few cards like that, in my opinion, in recent time. One thing I would like about Twins being printed, it would mean your opponent isn't playing Boss as their supporter for turn. So that could, if they're playing Twins, they're not playing Boss. Although we do have Great Catcher right now, so maybe like if Boss was the only Gust effect, even though I don't like Boss, I might not mind Twins too much, because it means your opponent's searching for 2 cards that aren't Gust effects. The next one we had here, Pow Hand Extension. Look at that Gust effect. But this is such an incredible card. I always love talking about this one. So Pow Hand Extension was from the second Team Rocket set in 2004. And it says you may use this card only if you have more prize cards left in your opponent. So like Twins. And it reads, move 1 energy card attached to the defending Pokemon to another of your opponent's Pokemon, or switch 1 of your opponent's bench Pokemon with 1 of the defending Pokemon. And that ending text is just because they had doubles rules back then, so 2 Pokemon could be in the active. But this is basically like a counter catcher plus an N-up hoarder. So, Mike, you played competitively during this time. I was just a casual at the time of Pow Hand Extension being out. But tell me a little bit about Pow Hand Extension and why you like or dislike this card.
Yeah, Pow was played a lot, and it was probably underplayed, to be honest with you. Same thing with Admin back in the day. I think POW wasn't really played in decks that didn't have natural synergy with going behind, but it probably just should have been in some decks. So it was played mostly with Electro DX decks. So you ZRE, so you'd blow up. So ZRE was kind of like the aggressive Electro deck where you would blow it up, attach a bunch of energies, and then use either Rayquaza EX or Zapdos EX, which had abilities that when they came into play, you attach energies to them from your other guys. And then you'd POW up their biggest threat, take a knockout, and then often, even if that got KO'd, then your POW would still be activated because they would have taken at least 4 prizes by that time. So you're kind of just like blow up your guy, kill their big guy with POW. The other way that POW was played most regularly was kind of like a spread variant where maybe playing Electrode, maybe not. It was played heavily in Metacham EX, for example, where you would, just kind of do your thing. You would spread around damage, and then if they killed you, then you would POW and either move energy around or gust them or do both, and then keep spreading and whatnot. Now, the really cool thing about POW is that you could play a bunch of POWs in one turn, and, let's say they were trying to play around getting their one big thing knocked out, you could say, okay, well, I'm going to play 2 POWs to move the energy from this guy to this guy on your bench, and then I'm going to POW up the guy on the bench, so now I've taken out, 5 energy cards, and you have and then you have no energy left on the field, right?
Yeah.
So I think while on the surface, it looks like you would almost always use the effect for the Gust effect, the fact that the decks that played POW played 3 or 4, right? Decks that played Countercatcher played 1 or 2, because of the flexibility of POW here, made it such a interesting, unique card that would be powerful probably in any format that it was printed in.
Yeah, I agree. Really awesome card, really awesome card design. I love having the situational Gust, like we've been talking about throughout this whole video. I think that recently we've had these guaranteed Gusts for, I think the better part of the 2010s. And it looks like they want to keep that Gust around. I remember when Lysander was about to rotate, and then it's like, we're getting Guzma and Burning Shadows.
At least they didn't reprint Guzma, man. Guzma was just so much better than Lysander.
Yeah, Guzma just invalidated special conditions for like how long?
Yeah. Guzma's so insane.
And then the last card we have here to talk about today, kind of just encompassing the idea of damage spread mechanics, which Mike started talking about a little bit with POW Hand. We have up here Chandelure from Noble Victories. The ability Cursed Shadow once a turn. If this is your active, you may put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. And right now we actually have a buffed version of that, which is Orbital VMAX. Once a turn, if this Pokemon is your active, you can just spread 1 to everything. So arguably, maybe not buffed, but a little different. It can get a max of 6 damage counters onto the board. But yeah, Mike and I were chatting a little bit before the video about just how damage spread is really underpowered and unviable for many different reasons. Mike, when do you think that kind of happened?
The last damage spread deck that I played in a tournament was about 2 years ago. It was like the Tapu Koko, Buzzwole.
Passimian, that one? Or not without Passimian?
So it wasn't playing Passimian, but it was kind of like around the same time.
Okay.
It was just kind of like Tapu Koko and Buzzwole and like Macargo and just random like little guy attackers.
Yeah.
It was like right after Zoroark just came out. Or
it was probably right after Worlds, maybe?
Yeah.
Because did it have the damage swap Lele?
Yeah, damage swap Lele was in there.
Because we got that a little later than Japan did.
Yeah, so that was like the last, and that deck was like good, but it wasn't tier 1 or anything. It was like tier 2, tier 3. It was super fun to play. I won a cities with it, or a League Cup, whatever they were at that time. I guess a League Cup. I won a League Cup with it. So really fun to play, and like, but even before that, there wasn't really too much. I mean, Decidueye was a bit of a spread deck, but yeah, since like Decidueye, Tapu Koko. Also, like if Tapu Koko was printed any time before it was printed, it would have been one of the most broken cards ever. Like, and it was pretty good while it was out, but it
Yeah.
wasn't super broken. But like if you print that in, I don't know, '09, 2010, best card in the format,
Yeah,
probably.
you would just play 4 Coco, 4 DC, things to get back your Cocos. You just need to use
Yeah.
Flying Flip 6 times and you clear the whole board,
Yeah.
basically.
So the fact that like Tapu Koko can be released and not be the most broken card in the format really, I think, says it all about how viable damage spread has been since kind of, well, certainly damage spread has been not viable at all since tag teams came out.
Hmm.
But even before that, with just like GX Pokemon having so much HP, is really when it kind of started to die down.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What I was talking about before the video was Wheezing from Unbroken Bonds. That was a card. I've always been a fan of damage spread, especially back in like I think like the Majestic Dawn era when we had like Empozong.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had like a Frostlass with damage spread. We had a lot of cool, and then the Spear Tomb. I think when you played it down, it did one to everything that already had damage. Lots of cool damage spread stuff in the history of Pokemon TCG. But so I really liked Wheezing, and I was only able to play Wheezing effectively for like 2 League Cups because people started understanding how to play against Wheezing after that, I guess. Like basically the way the game's designed net right now, you could just play down your tag team like Pikarom in the active and just attach pass, and Wheezing's only going to do 40 damage a turn but if you play down your whole board, Weezing's doing like 240 plus a turn if you play down everything. So your opponent could effectively sit behind one tag team until it's about to be knocked out, and then bench the next one, just stagger their big basic Pokemon and never lose to damage spread. So that's, although they do print damage spread attacks right now, I don't think they could effectively make them much more powerful for the energy cost they're doing them for. Like Salamence right now is like a buffed Flying Flip for 3 energy, it does 30 everywhere. And then Salamence VMAX for 1 energy does 40 to 2 things. Galarian Darmanitan does 200 and then 30 to the whole bench. And your opponent can really get around these things by, playing a Big Charm or just not benching their Pokemon all at the same time. So yeah, damage spread's always been a really cool mechanic, but right now with the power creep of Pokemon, damage spread would and the numbers it would have to do to be good would, I think, make it broken probably.
Right. Like the best damage spread card in the format is Pikarom.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
silly. Um,
Is it
yeah, and
snakes?
yeah, right. And like Chandelure was such a cool card, and I think it was for a short period of time. It was like the best deck in the format. You played Chandelure, you played Vileplume that locked out items.
Mm-hmm.
You played a Dodrio that gave your guys free retreat, so you'd effectively get 2 Chandelures off every turn. It's just that was such a fun deck and super high skill cap too, because I think the one thing that I've always liked about damage spread, we saw it a little bit with Malamar actually. I would say
Yeah.
is that is that every counter matters a lot. Every single point of damage that you put has to be intentional, and you got to think about it 2, 3, 4, 8 turns in advance. And that's one of the things that I've always really liked about damage spread. And Chandelure, I think, is the perfect example of kind of everything we've talked about in this video. Of it's a stage 2 that if it was printed now, it would go in the bin like immediately,
As fast as possible.
yeah, and like because you not only do you need to get a stage 2 out, but you need multiple of these guys out to be effective. And like 3 counters is nothing now based on the HPs. But like Luke and I were saying, even if it was like 10 counters, it still probably wouldn't even be viable.
Yeah.
Just because you need 2 or 3 of them out to really be effective.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
But this is exactly the type of card that was very viable 10 years ago or whenever Chandelure's out. And it would be really awesome to have a card like that be good again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good place to wrap up today's discussion on card design. But yeah, so thank you, Mike, for being on the channel with me. I really enjoyed getting to talk about some of these old cards and
Yeah, of
where
course.
maybe we'd like the game to go in the future. I think we're a long way away from having this kind of game back again, but the way I look at it is if we could go from the Mewtwo Darkrai Wars of 2012 to the Sun and Moon pre-tag team era of 2017, I guess we could get there again. It's just going to take some purposeful designing from creatures.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed the format even before 2017, like 2015 to like Worlds 2018. I would say all of those, most there's some exceptions, but the game was really fun during all those years and pretty skillful and whatnot. So even though it's different from back in the day, getting back to something like that would be great.
Yeah. So I think they tried to kind of emulate the Mega Evolutions that kind of overrode the big basics. I think they kind of tried to do that again with VMAXs. Definitely a little different. They had to make them more powerful, but yeah, hopefully we'll get there again someday. But yeah, thank you for being on. If you have any shout outs you'd like to give, or just remind the folks at home where they can find your current content at.
Yeah. So again, Trash Lunch Podcast. Listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. I also just want to shout out Limitless because like the online tournament system that they have put together over the last 6 months has made it so much of a better online experience.
It's beautiful. Play.limitlesstcg.com is a dream.
Yeah. Like, thank you so much to Robin and all those guys for doing that. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Shout out to Mike again for being on. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that for daily Pokemon TCG content. Check out PotownStore.com for all of your PTCGO needs. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network. Peace out.